Charlotte, my little girl, was born on the 31st of March. And it was definitely not the birth that I expected. Understandably, there were a lot of restrictions in place at the hospital, as you would expect. But to turn up at that hospital and find a security guard on the door, and the midwife who you've called ahead of time waiting there for you, was just the first strange thing in a succession of many that then followed. I had quite a tough labour, as many women do, and I had to be admitted to hospital when I arrived. Of course, my husband Tom, unfortunately, he couldn't be allowed in at that stage because I wasn't in established labour, so he had to go home. I was in a lot of pain that first night, just sort of by myself. He was only allowed to stay with me up until about half an hour to an hour after Charlotte was born. So we knew he was going to have to leave, and that affected some of our decisions. In the end, after what was a very tough labour, Charlotte was born by C-section. For him, spending the first couple of days of his newborn daughter's life not able to be with her or with me was really difficult. And the rules were changing all the time. At one point, on the Monday, she was born in the early hours of Tuesday morning, we asked the midwife if Tom was able to go home and collect some more bits and pieces for me. And she said, yeah, absolutely no problem. Ring on your way back. We'll come down and let you in. And within seconds of him sort of getting himself ready to go to get the things, Anna, the midwife, came rushing back in and said, you can't go. They've changed the restrictions. If you leave, you won't be allowed to come back. So things were changing all the time. Everything was moving. I remember sitting there on the ward, on my own after Charlotte was born, taking stock as you do as a new parent, thinking I'm now responsible for another human being. There were about 4 other women on the ward. It was just incredibly tough. Staff, total praise, really reassuring, really calm, handled everything brilliantly, and they really made all the difference because I wasn't able to have my husband there. But yeah, it was a very strange experience, very strange. I was physically poorly to a degree, had very, very bad swelling in my legs and ankles, which is why they kept me in hospital. But I'd also had a C-section. But actually, it wasn't until I got home that things changed for us. You're so tired, and that's really difficult. You don't get much sleep. You sleep in shifts. You do whatever you can to grab 40 winks here and there. And that's really how it began for me. I was diagnosed with postnatal depression and anxiety about 3 or 4 weeks after Charlotte was born. The day I reached out for help, when I realised that everything wasn't okay, we'd had a day of particularly bad feeds with Charlotte, and I had watched her crying and crying and crying for about 4 hours straight, and nothing we were doing was working. She had fed and we'd changed her nappy, but she had really bad colic. We just couldn't ease her pain. We couldn't help her. And we were taking it in turns to try and get some sleep. And I was on my own with her in the living room. And I'd tried everything. I'd been walking up and down. I'd been rocking her, singing. And I had an exercise ball when I was pregnant. And I remember I held her in my arms and sat down on my exercise ball. And I just felt so frustrated and so tired and so ruined. And as I sat down, her head banged into my chest, and instantly my head went to all these very dark places. I've hurt my child. What if I've caused her serious injuries that I don't know about? And I just burst into uncontrollable tears, and my husband came running in, and I gave Charlotte to him, and I was sat on my bathroom floor in floods of tears, pulling at my own hair because I wanted to make myself in as much pain as she was in. And I have never dealt with emotions like that before. The thoughts that go through your head. And the hardest one probably to talk about is the thought, actually, I just wanted to walk out the door and not come back. And the guilt was horrendous. I love my husband. I love Charlotte. She's our world. And I just felt that I was failing as a mum.